People who were damn near murdered. How did it happen, and how did you get out of it? Worked as a bouncer and had a few drunkards who got violent. I got very good at dodging thrown bottles. One day I get the usual call to come and give someone the walk of shame. Well, I grab his shoulder and start walking him out, and before I realize something's happened, he stabbed me in the thigh and was about to go for my throat before he got glassed by a patron. A few stitches and a funny walk for a few weeks, and I was fine, but that guy always got free drinks. His only problem with glassing the dude was, well, now I've got no beer. That's a bit sad. Got shot in the abdomen during a house invasion, was bleeding out, and the only thing that kept me alive was focusing on my breath and my buddy smacking me across the face and telling me, nobody dies from a shot to the stomach. Obviously lying to me, but it helped keep me focused. And I guess the doctors too when I made it to the hospital. Nobody dies from a shot to the stomach. What a good buddy in distressing times. Still lets you know how embarrassing it would be to be the first to die from a stomach shot. I'm glad you survived though. Did you have any long-term side effects? He's a great guy and I owe him more than I could say. Thank you. I do still carry the bullet in me. It hurts during the cold days, and I have a new hatred for fireworks. What happened after? Did the police catch the shooter? If so, were you asked to testify against him? The guy and his buddy, who was rubbing a machete against our faces, were both caught like 4 days later. I was asked to testify and was happy to. I wanted him to see his failure. I got stabbed in the chest a few years ago during a fight with some bike thieves. Didn't notice at the time and escaped the fight and rode the bike away. Then I checked myself and discovered lots of blood. Went to a nearby shop and sat down inside, put my finger in the hole and called the ambulance. I had a punctured lung and blood in the pleural cavity, but I was otherwise okay. The lad that did it went to prison. Not sure if I was nearly murdered, but someone threatened me with a knife, probably trying to rob me. However, at that point, I was on the phone with my dad because my mom had an accident and completely ignored the guy. I think he just let me go because he realized how stressed I was. Anecdotal, but this has happened to several people I know. They ignored them for whatever reason. For example, because they just didn't know how to respond and just kept walking past the robber, and the robbers just let them go. I always chalked it up to the robbers losing control of the situation and not knowing how to properly get the victim's attention. When I was 16, my friends and I were out in the woods with a .22 rifle and some cans and zombie targets. I finished my Lil magazine and handed the rifle to a buddy. Went out to set up the cans and targets back up, and a shot whizzed past my left ear within 2 inches. Walked up to him, grabbed a rifle, and punched him straight in the face. He was ostracized from the group not long after that. My ex-wife was behind the wheel of her car with the door open. I was standing between her and the door trying to talk to her. She reversed hard out of the parking lot and the door knocked me back. She then floored it straight at me as I was trying to get up. Only recourse was to jump on the hood. Got my fingers on one hand in the hood lip by the windshield and hung on for dear life. Got thrown off and hit my back and head against the curb when she went around a curve in the apartment complex. She ran before she got tracked down by the SPs on the base we worked at. I don't know how fast she was going, probably not more than 15 to 25 miles per hour, but don't let the action movies fool you. Jumping on a hood is neither easy nor fun. It's fucking terrifying. I was kidnapped, beaten, and had a gun held to my head while in the vehicle. I just agreed with everything he said, apologized for who knows what, and promised to do whatever he said and to not call the police. He let me out of the car at my workplace, and I immediately went in and called the police. I felt stupid for years afterward, but now I realized whatever I did to live through that was the correct thing to do at the time. My partner tried to strangle me. I was already seeing black and a few stars in the black universe on my way to death. Then the police rang the doorbell and he stopped. The neighbor, an 11 to 13-old boy, called the police. He had his room directly at the house close by, and he could see through the window. He saved my life and the life of my unborn baby. I was coming home from my restaurant job at like 2 a.m. I stopped at a sketchy Walgreens to grab some snacks. I was getting into my car when a dude ran up behind me yelling, my friend, please you must help me." So startled, I turned and saw a large man in front of me. He had a thick Haitian accent. He started frantically explaining that he had just arrived from Haiti and desperately needed a ride to his friend's house to reunite with his family. FYI, the giant earthquake in Haiti had just happened. Normally I try and help everyone I can, but this dude was giving me weird vibes, like he was on a lot of drugs. I politely declined and he got aggressive, and I ended up just hopping into my car driving quickly away. The next morning I saw on the news he had convinced 2 young girls to give him a ride. He pulled out a knife and forced them to drive about 100 miles away. He then made them park on a side road somewhere and started stabbing them. One died and the other ran away and got help. He got shot by the police trying to get away. When I was 7 years old, I was locked, master lock, key was with one of them, in a dog kennel I barely fit into by my mom's BF's kids. They took the kennel out to the above-ground pool and held it on the edge, joking like they were going to drop it. They ended up doing just that, and I was under in seconds. The plate at the bottom of the kennel made it hard for them to pull it back out, so they had to turn it on its side and then pull it out. They didn't bother setting me down though. They just dropped me. I remember the feeling of my hands crammed through the holes in the kennel with grass between them. I heard some arguing and what I assume was fighting. The old brother came to my rescue and let me out. I slept in his room for the rest of the summer till I went home to my dad's. My ex-boyfriend was abusive the entire time we were together, but it culminated in him trying to strangle me with an electric cord. Our elderly neighbor randomly knocked on our door because she needed help shoveling her driveway right as I was starting to lose consciousness. He was a police officer, so he had an appearance to keep up, and immediately switched his mask back to answer and go help her. I found out later when my ex left for his overnight shift that she had long suspected something bad was happening because she would see me with bruises and gotten a bad feeling out of nowhere that night. And that is why she came over to ask for help. She called her son to take me to the hospital, and that was when I was finally able to leave him. I will always consider her my guardian angel. Side note for anyone reading this: if a partner ever makes you feel unsafe, leave, make a safety plan, and GTFO. They will always do it again, and it will always get worse. For further context, I was 16 years old and he was 26. I had been kicked out of my house, whole different story, and he swept in and saved me. I, naively and ironically, thought I would be safe from my abusive family situation with a police officer. This situation was indeed reported by ER staff as I was a minor and did eventually give his name. This happened in a small-ish township where the whole department were his co-workers. Many charges were technically filed, but he was never actually arrested. And everything was dropped after alibis were provided by his co-workers, and a general cover-up was done. I made a post on a DV sub about the situation a while ago that included snippets of some of the reports as proof, but it kinda blew up and I deleted it out of fear he'd somehow find it. I was granted a short RO, basically as a STFU measure, but he would still have other officers bother me around town and harass me with fake numbers, so nothing could ever be directly linked to him. Then the second it expired, he began physically stalking me again. It has been many years. I have since moved over halfway across the country, changed my legal name, changed my number at least a dozen times, and if you were to look my name up online, it's like I don't exist. He still will pop up occasionally with a random letter or spam text from fake numbers as a little, "Hey, I'm still here and watching you," I guess. It doesn't affect me much anymore. As crazy as that may sound, you become numb to it. I've basically had to accept that he will probably never fully leave me alone. Moral of the story is again, leave and don't look back. No matter what gender you and the abuser are, no matter what ages, no matter how bad the abuse is, no matter what. I was 21. It was a murder-suicide attempt. He drove me into a river at 2 a.m. on a below-freezing night about 30 miles from town. I was asleep in the passenger seat and woke up when the water hit my legs. The doors wouldn't open due to the pressure, but luckily the windows were down. We swam out. I dragged him to shore. He laid on the riverbank and cried while incoherently apologizing. I led us through the woods for hours until we found a farmhouse. I was mostly fine, but had hypothermia and a torn ACL. I told him to chill himself ASAP and leave me out of it. Then I never spoke to him again. A father killed his wife, then came to the school looking to kill his son. The staff convinced him his son was not there after he threatened to kill everyone in my class. He was caught in Indiana on his way to kill his parents. He was schizophrenic, could not afford his medicine anymore, and had an episode where he thought the world was ending, so he was going to kill his family so they would not suffer. Him holding a knife at someone's grandmother's throat while yelling, "I'll kill them all. They are already dead," was extremely terrifying to a class of 7-year-olds. That's so sad. It's a tragedy what happened, and also that he couldn't afford his medication. The school covered it up, so there was no help for us kids. From 7 to 43, I thought I was normal, then found out I have been living with PTSD all those years. What helped stop the nightmares is realizing the father was let down by the medical system in the US, and that was the root cause. When I was around 10 years old, my abusive father decided I need to learn how to swim. He just threw me into the lake. I was struggling and he did nothing. I lost consciousness and almost drowned. Random adult guy saved me from drowning. My father twisted the story to make it seem like he lost me out of his sight, when I clearly remember him standing near, watching as I sank down. I'm still scared of deep water. I'm almost 30 and I can't swim. I never tried again after that experience. When I was a kid, my little brother had a mild obsession with knives, to the point where he collected them under his pillow. Once, for reasons I've forgotten since, he got mad at me and stabbed me in the back, literally, with a seam ripper. Had he used any of the knives under his pillow, I'd be dead now. When I was an early teenager, I went to a friend's house whose older sister was having a party. It had alcohol, but very limited. Her parents were home and we mostly played video games and cards. But more people than expected showed up, including some people who had already graduated. This one guy was a former high school jock loser who started in on making fun of me hitting on me. The parents asked him to leave and he did, making a bit of a fuss but eventually walking out. I was all upset and crying and wanted to go home, but home was a mile-ish walk through some woods and dark roads. So her parents told me they would drive me home in a bit when the party was over. I was still upset and I was very dumb. So after a bit, I snuck out and walked home. A few hundred yards from my house, someone hit me with something. I was told it was a baseball bat and stabbed me in the stomach several times. I do not remember any of this, nor do I remember someone finding me bleeding in a ditch and taking me to a hospital. If I had been there for much more time, I probably would have bled out and died in a ditch. Are you thinking it was that jock guy? That was the general thought, but he did not get in trouble for it. He did go to jail a few years later for beating up his girlfriend, so it seems likely it was him. When I was about 5 years old, my family was having dinner at a family friend's house. They had a kid my age, so after dinner we went up to his room to play. I don't remember what happened, but my dad said that he realized that after a while of us playing, that we were suddenly making no noise. And anyone who has kids knows that kids going from making a ton of noise to no noise is a bad sign. So he went upstairs to check on us, thinking we had broke something. And when he opened the door to the room, he saw me lying on the ground, and the kid choking me by pressing his foot against my windpipe while smiling. My dad shoved him off of me, obviously, since I'm typing this. And as far as I'm aware, I didn't have any brain damage from losing oxygen. What happened with the family friends? We would still go over, but my dad wouldn't let me be alone anymore. My brother and me always had to be within eyeshot. What happened to the kid? I can't remember if he got in trouble or not. I assume so. He was a pretty wild kid, but I saw him a few years ago and he's much more chill. I made him give me $20 as a late apology for choking me, so all is forgiven. When I was 18, my ex-boyfriend stalked me and basically ambushed me in a municipal parking lot in my small hometown. As I was unlocking my car to get in and go home, he punched me in the face twice, and I decided to just be compliant and go with him. It was broad daylight and there were other people in the parking lot, but either they didn't notice or didn't want to assist. I won't go into minute details here unless some really wants to understand the ins and outs of why someone you know might do this to you. But he brought me to his parents' house where he sexually assaulted me and stabbed me 27 times over a period of 4 hours. I survived by not speaking a single word to him the entire time and not reacting to anything that he did to me. I innately knew he wanted to cause me pain, and I disconnected myself from the pain and emotion purposely, so as not to give him anything at all. He eventually stopped and fled and just left me there. When I was sure he was gone, I got dressed the best I could and started walking on the road where a guy I went to high school with previously, we had both already graduated, picked me up and drove me to a friend's house in town. I lived in a rural Wisconsin town. I stayed at her house for over a day before she convinced me to go to the hospital. I was afraid my parents would be angry with me, which was why I was hesitant. They cleaned and debrided my wounds best they could, but because I had been walking around like that for so long, they couldn't do much more than that for me. My wounds didn't go deep enough to hurt my internal organs, but many did cut into my muscle layers. Yes, I had extensive scarring over my torso for a large part of my life until I was able to have cosmetic surgery to remove a lot of my damaged skin and muscle in my chest and abdomen when I was in my 30s. Nothing happened to my stalker. Stalking laws were not something that were a common thing in 1990. No charges were pressed. My attacker stayed low for a few years in Minneapolis and then moved back to my hometown area, where he married a couple of times and had 5 daughters. About 15 years ago, he reached out to me on FB and wanted to be friends. My father didn't want any charges pressed and felt that I had gotten what I deserved for dating the guy in the first place. My mother went along with what he wanted. We never spoke about what happened to me ever again. It was up to me to work through on my own. My dad is dead now, and my mom has apologized to me in her own way. I don't speak with her about it to this day because she feels so guilty and horrible, and I honestly do not want to do more to her that would make her feel that way. She somehow felt controlled by my dad for many years until she divorced him after 35 years of marriage. I have gone to therapy in the last 15 years of my life and it helped. But most everything I've done to survive and live has been based on spending a lot of my time being honest and introspective of myself, trying to become as much of an expert on myself as I can. That started the minute that I got into the car with him and we headed out to his parents' house, and it hasn't stopped since. I survived by not giving my attacker what he wanted, despite being compliant with what he asked. I'm so sorry you had to go through all that. It's like your father, who should love and support you, is the biggest asshole here. Your ex is an evil subhuman, but your father is still the biggest asshole in the story.